We've got a special speaker today, Ustaz Ayman Yaqoob. Ustaz Ayman is studied at Al-Azhar University in Egypt, and he's currently doing a master's in linguistics. In linguistic studies and translation in Birmingham University, where he's also teaching. So we'll just crack on.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing today? Sorry for the inconvenience. Why Arabic? This is the topic of my presentation today. Why Arabic? Why this language has this important status around the world? Even though Arabs themselves, they haven't paid so much attention to the language. So they haven't exerted any efforts to make it like English, for example. If we look at English language, now everyone, all over the world, a lot of people, they speak English language. Because English people, they made it an international language, the lingua franca, as they say. So, but still, you have over 400 million, they speak Arabic as native speakers. 20 countries, first language is Arabic. And if we talk about Muslims, because the language is related to Quran, so you are talking about around 1.7 billion Muslims all over the world. Each one at least would know how to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and read Surah Al-Fatiha. So that makes the language so popular, but it just people do not pay that much attention to it. On the other hand, in Arabic-speaking countries, people would find it more prestigious to speak some English or French and say hi, never mind, sorry, excuse-moi. So they start to mix some English with some French. Just this would add some prestige to them. This happened because even native speakers, they do not appreciate the language that much. They do not understand how important this language is. So this is why I'm going to talk about why Arabic language. First of all, the language itself. As you see, it's spoken by as many as 422 million around the world. And as I said, 1.7 billion Muslims. Some of them, they know some of the language, even though they can recite it, they can understand it. Sometimes they cannot read it, but they understand some Arabic. Arabs, they love this language so much. They called it the language of poetry. Even linguists who research languages, they say Arabic is the most poetic language that exists and ever existed. So before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and revealed the message of Islam to him, the Arabic language existed before this, because some people mix this. They think that the message of Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and this is the beginning of the Arabic language. No, this is not true. The language, Quran came down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this message to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to challenge the Arabs themselves. If we look at this is some Arabic poetry. If we look here, some of you will be able to read it, some not, but you can just picture the image. So, you see this word, as you see it, consider it an image. If you see it, and you see the word after it, and you go on like this is a line of poetry. This is a line of poetry. It reads, ألوم صديقي وهذا محال. Alum, the first word, it means I blame. Sadiqi, my friend. Wahada, and this, muhal, impossible. And then it goes, the second line, صديقي أحبه كلام يقال. The third one, وهذا كلام بليغ الجمال. The fourth line, محال يقال الجمال خيال. This is poetry. It's very nice. The point right now is not the translation. It is, I just want to let you know that the Arabs, they used to play with this language. They mastered it. It's their native tongue and they loved it so much. So, if you read it horizontally or vertically, it makes the same line. So look, ألوم صديقي وهذا محال. Read it like this. ألوم صديقي وهذا محال. So you can read the poem horizontal and vertical. Those people mastered the language. They can write a poem that you would read and you would feel the poet is praising someone. Another person would read it and they would think it's an insult to the person. They mastered the language that they can play with every word. So here you can read those lines vertically and horizontally. It comes the second line, صديقي أحبه كلام يقال. You can read it, صديقي أحبه كلام يقال. And then the third one, you start from the third word, وهذا كلام بليغ الجمال محال يقال الجمال خيال. So, Arabs at this time, mastering the language, having this ability of playing with words. So, some poets at this time, the kings and the people who used to to rule the tribes and clans at this time, they loved poetry so much that sometimes they would gather all the poets and they would ask them to say a poem. And then the best one is they're going to weigh it, and the poet is going to have its weight in gold. So they appreciated the language so much. So people have this ability. This is why some people don't understand Al-Quran is a miracle by itself without any scientific knowledge being in the language. Without any scientific knowledge, because some people would follow this pattern of saying, okay, Quran mentioned this and said that about this and said that about that. No, we don't need this. As Arabs and Arab native speakers would understand that Quran is a miracle just by itself, linguistically. It has nothing to do with scientific knowledge. How come? We reflected in this. We said that, you see, the people mastered it. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He sent the message of Quran, and then the people said, okay, they started to say about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he is a poet. He is making things up. But these people, they know the language. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran, and this is one of the miracles of Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَمْ يَقُولُونَ افْتَرَاهُ. They say iftara, it means the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made it up. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ, then Muhammad replied to them, yes, you made it up. قُلْ فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ. Okay, so you as the native speaker to this language, make one surah. You say Muhammad made it up, then make one surah. One surah of the Quran. Make one surah that would look alike it. Not even this. وَادْعُوا مَنِ اسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. And if you are truthful about this, okay, call upon everyone, anyone that you can call and gather to make one surah, do it. So you say one person invented this, made it up, okay, you all Arabs gather together, okay, and make one surah. And this is i'jaz. This is i'jaz, this is mu'jiza, this is a miracle. They were not able to make one surah. All Arabs at this time. And then they are saying that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who does not know how to read and write made it up? Let's assume that he knew how to read and write, and he was one of the most eloquent Arabs at this time. Okay, so did the rest of the Arabs make one surah of Quran like this? The linguistic miracle of Quran lies within. We do not need the scientific miracles to prove that this Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just Quran by itself as a language. And this is why non-native speaker will not be able to understand this point if they do not know the language. They will not be able to appreciate the linguistic features that exist in Quran. How come this Quran was a challenge to Arabs, the people who were able to play with Arabic words like I mentioned before? This is just one example because we don't have time. If I go on mentioning the things that Arabs were doing with like poetry and like, words, you would be amazed. And then came Quran and they were not able to imitate one surah of it, just one surah of Quran. And then when they said that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made it up, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, then tell them to make up, one surah of Quran. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that these non-believers are not going to believe because they do not want to believe. It's not about that they are searching for the truth and they cannot find it. No, it's clear before their eyes, but they do not see it. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another verse in Quran said, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. At this time, there were the people who appreciated the language and understood how miraculous this language is. But what about when the time goes by and there will be people who do not understand this language and cannot appreciate its linguistic features? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are going to show them the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this Quran, fil afaq, in the horizon, the things like everything that is surrounding us, وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, and in ourselves, حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ, so they understand that this is the truth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here we come to the next part of this presentation about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed us these miracles in the horizons and in ourselves. But we are concentrating on what? On the linguistic features of the Arabic language. Most of us know about this, but I'm just mentioning it to defy a point, because when I was like searching and reading about the miracles in Quran, scholars, they have two different points of view. Some of them say, no, we cannot talk about Quran as a proof, like, we cannot use it to prove like any scientific thing and say, okay, Quran said this and it means that, because things change and we may not understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really meant by this. Because some people would go, they go beyond the point and they start, okay, Quran mentioned the speed of light, and then they start talking about when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِنَّ يَوْمًا عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ كَأَلْفِ سَنَةٍ مِمَّا تَعُدُّونَ, that the day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, it's like, it's an equal to 1,000, كَأَلْفِ يَوْمٍ, 1,000 day from the days that we have right now. So people would say, okay, and they start, make some equation and say, okay, and this, and then other people would reply and say, no, the velocity of the moon and it's different and everything is different, and they will start to debate about this. We're not going to talk about this. We're not going to talk about numbers and like, in Surah Al-Hadid, the number of the verse and it's equal. No, we're not going to talk about this. We're going to talk about language. Something that we can say, no, it's clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this. And even if the science right now disagree with it, it's going to agree at some point. Because we cannot say otherwise. And this is one of them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يقول, مرج البحرين يلتقيان مرج البحرين يلتقيان. The two seas when they come together. بينهما برزخ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala separated the two seas. لا يبغيان. So they're like this. This is not going to go there, and this is not going to go on the fresh and the salty water. One guy on YouTube, he was talking and said, no, this is not true. He was talking to some young girls to prove his point. And he came in like a very, famous TV show and saying, I went to like an Islamic school and I asked the girl, what is miraculous about your Quran? And they said if you mix salt water with like fresh water, they are not going to mix. And he tried to twist what they said. They didn't say this. They talked about this phenomenon that is scientifically proven. Because of the density of the water, the salt water and the fresh water, so they will never mix together. And he started to make a point and people just clapping and they went, no. Go and read in English. Do not write scientific miracles in Quran, linguistic miracles in Quran. No. Go read and the density of fresh water and salty water and how when they come together. And I have seen this myself in Egypt. I have seen this myself in Egypt when the Nile and the Red Sea, they come together, and we have this in some parts in Egypt. I went to a place called Dumyat, we call it in Arabic Dumyat, and I went there. And you can, easily be there, put your hands here, taste it, it's salty, put your hands here, taste it, it's fresh water. So this is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this. مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. This is the end of it. No one can disagree with this. As a Muslim, even if science says no, they mix together, no. I believe the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at some point you will find when they don't mix together. Deep waters and the darkness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in one verse in Quran, He said, أو كظلمات في بحر اللجي يغشاه موج من فوقه سحاب ظلمات بعضها فوق بعض. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was describing something and He said, and it's like كظلمات, darkness over darkness, في بحر اللجي, in a sea that is so deep and dark. يغشاه موج من فوقه موج, the waves, and above it there are waves, and above it سحاب, clouds. ظلمات بعضها فوق بعض, darkness over darkness. إذا أخرج يده, if you got your hands out, لم يكد يراها, you will not be able to see it. ومن لم يجعل الله له نورا فما له من نور. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make a simile like this, trying to make the picture closer to our mind, and He say أو كظلمات في بحر اللجي, and then 1,000 years after, people discover that in deep water seas, it's so dark, very dark, and they start to explore, the depth of the ocean. They say it's so dark that, the fish down there, they adapt themselves, and they have, they produce some light so be able to see. Go and look it online, away from the language, just in deep water sea. This is not the only thing that is so dark down there. This is not the only thing. Why it's dark? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it. And look at the language. في بحر اللجي يغشاه موج. When they are talking about why it's dark down the sea, the rays that come from the sun should just penetrate the water and make it clear. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يغشاه موج, waves. We see the waves, and scientists said because of the waves, and they're they have this angle, they reflect, so when the rays come over them, they do not penetrate the sea. So that's what makes it dark a little bit. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here didn't mention only one kind of waves. He said, يَغْشَاهُ مَوْجٌ مِنْ فَوْقِهِ مَوْجٌ. How come? Two kind of waves? And then recently they understood that the waves are not just about the wave that we see, on the surface of the water. These waves are caused by the wind. But there are waves down deep the sea. A different type of waves. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, what makes it dark like this, darkness over darkness, are the waves above the waves. And then the sahab, and then the clouds. Because when the sun comes, the cloud, it takes away some of the light of the sun, and then the waves on the surface of the sea, and then the waves down there. من فوقه موج من فوقه سحاب ظلمات بعضها فوق بعض. Darkness over darkness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here is the language. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this about the bottom of the sea and it's like so dark, this was so clear, it doesn't bear any other interpretation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was giving an example of the darkness, and it said it's like the sea when there is a wave over a wave, and then the clouds, they are stopping the light from penetrating the water. So that was so clear. Look at the language, how precise is it. Look at the specificity of the topic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. And no wonder Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the universe, and He knows everything about it, so He's setting an example. And these are the miracles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ, in the horizon. This is one amongst the many things. And this is so beautiful. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يقول فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَهْدِيَهُ يَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ وَمَنْ يُرِدْ أَنْ يُضِلَّهُ يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making another simile, كَأَنَّمَا يَصَّعَّدُ فِي السَّمَاءِ. It translates, فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَهْدِيَهُ, those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to guide them to the right path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make their chest open to the message of Islam, so they're going to accept it and feel it. وَمَنْ يُرِدْ أَنْ يُضِلَّهُ, and those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to keep them astray from the message from Hidayah, يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make their chest tight, very tight, ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to make it closer to the minds of the people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, as كَأَنَّمَا يَصَّعَّدُ فِي السَّمَاءِ, as if they are going up to the sky. But at this time, people didn't understand it. They didn't understand, when we go up to the sky, what this has to do with our chest being tight. And then, people who go hiking and climbing mountains, and they go to Everest, and when you go above the sea level, the oxygen level drops. It drops. That's why people who go climbing, when they reach specific height, they have to put on masks and they have to have oxygen tanks. Because when they go up and with the oxygen level going down and down and down, they are going to feel tightness in their chest. Because they are going up, trying to reach the sky. So, look at the language. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set an example and then made it closer to our minds, and He said as if. So you understand what those non-believers whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leave them astray, how they feel. So precise. So precise. Even if we go back 1,000 years ago and I read this verse, I'd understand that there is something about going up that would make our chest tight. We don't know it, we haven't went to the sky, to the space, but I would just understand this just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this. كأنما يصعد في السماء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many verses in the Quran tries to simplify things to us. Make them simple so we would understand them. So in some verses he would like make a simile with qatmir, fatil, and naqir. And then if we look here, the word qatmir that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Quran, and Quran came to challenge who? Arabs. They have dates, everywhere. So he wanted to make something closer to their mind. So he used the word qatmir in Quran. And qatmir, when you get like a dry date, and then you eat it and you get the seed out from it, you're going to see this very light thing that is covering the seed. This is qatmir. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used it to make like a simile to like a very thin thing that will not weigh anything. And then in other verses in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word fatil. And and the seed, it has a crack, and there'll be this little thing just in the crack, and this is fatil. And naqir, on the other side of the date, you would find this little dent in each date. Sometimes they are different, but you will find this little dent. And this is naqir. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to make similes with the things in the horizon, the things that we see, the dates, the seas, the water, the sky, everything. And here I come to the point. Because some scholars said we cannot rely on the Quran to say, okay, this proves this scientific point of that, as I mentioned before. But this is another approach to the language. We are not saying that the Quran said this is like 4.5 or 5.6 or any other figures. We are talking about the linguistic meaning of each word in the Quran. It has a meaning. Not talking about the other thing, because we can say about when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said how the baby is formed inside the mother uterus and everything. This was like so clear that like the stages. No, I'm talking about the language, the word. What does it mean? Go look in like an Arabic dictionary and go look up the word and see what the word means. And then examine the signs away from the people who put them together. Just you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Just like wander in this, on the earth, in the whole universe. And you look and see yourself. You don't have to find someone to see it for yourself. You can see it. You read the language, understand the meaning, and then examine the universe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, and He knows every little thing in this universe. So again, just to sum this up, if we talk about the language came to the people who mastered the language, the people of the language, and it was miraculous that they were not able to imitate even one verse of Quran. And then we look at each word in Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala khalaqa, created, it's different when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nazzala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down. Go and when you read, examine. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala khalaqa. And in other things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said nazzala or anzala. What is the difference? Didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create everything? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything. So why in like some verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala khalaqa, and in other Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says nazzala or anzala? Like for example in Surah Al-Hadid, I'm not going to go about the figures, I'm talking just about the linguistic part. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ فِيهِ بَأْسٌ شَدِيدٌ. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about like the earth and like, you know, and the sky and everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala خلق السماوات والأرض. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala خلق الحديد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said أنزل أو نزل, it means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down. Then it wasn't on earth. And then you go and look, and science would say, yes, it wasn't on earth. It came from the sky, from other planets. You know, they have different theories about this. But when we look at the language and each specific word in the language, we understand why Arabic. Why this language is so important. Why do we have to understand it and learn it? Why people would talk about the language of Quran and the Arabic language and say, oh, this language is just beautiful and you know it's miraculous, and we do not understand why. Because we do not, we listen to it, but we do not understand the difference between this and that. You want to understand this, you want to explore the universe and see the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set in the horizons for us and asked us to explore them, then you have to understand the language. You have to understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this here and there. But be careful. Do not make things up. Because these are the points that non-Muslims will say, okay, here, wait a second. You say that your Quran said that it's precise, the speed of light is so and so and so. But here we go. There's like, you know, it is relative and it cannot be so precise, and the black hole and no, you do not go like this. Because Quran didn't say it is specific, the numbers or anything, so we cannot assume that it was mentioned. What we have is what we have. The points that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, the points that we can make a point out of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that and it means this. And there is no other interpretation to this. And here is the balance between being in two different extremes. It's just to stick with the language, understand it, analyze it, and you will see the miracle of the language of the Quran, the Arabic language. So, from here we start. I urge every one of you, really, if you do not know the language, start from now to search and understand. Understand the language. Understand why it's so important in our lives. Why should we learn the language? It would make it easier for you when you are standing, you know, behind an imam reciting Quran. And then you listen to this imam saying this and you say, oh Allah, how miraculous the language of Quran is. You understand this. We cannot understand how miraculous this language is without understanding the meanings of each word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in this Quran. And this is my approach to reach the scientific miracles in Quran, is through the language, not through the numbers or anything. And this would keep you in the safe side of understanding the language and not making mistakes that other people are waiting for just to say what you say about your Quran is not true, so that means it's not true itself. Okay? Jazakumullahu khairan. Yeah, that's it.
Jazakallah khair, Ustaz Ayman, for questions. Jazakallah khair for beautiful insight. Question time. So, anybody have any questions? Ustaz Ayman, language expert, so please take the opportunity.
Jazakallah khair for everything, and you've given us some insight into, and obviously time is limited, but there's questions about the verses with regards to where only the letters are mentioned, such as Alif Lam Mim and things like this, and we've heard differing narrations, but the overriding understanding is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've heard which
about the letter, some verses of Quran, they are going to start was like, Alif Lam Mim غُلِبَتِ الرُّومُ, for example. Alif Lam Mim. Most of the scholars who talked about this there, they said only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the knowledge of what these letters mean. And when they say this, we cannot go further and try to interpret them, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wasn't given anything about like why those letters are miraculous or what lies within them. And linguistically, we cannot analyze them, because they are just letters connected together. So there is no root in the language, in the Arabic language, that we can relate to and understand what does it mean. So we cannot interpret them. We will say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these letters mean something that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about. It's like when people were like asking the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam about like, how do we live, and like, where is our like, the soul, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. It's a matter that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about. So we have just to understand things. Something that we can understand and some other thing we will not be able to understand. And relating to this, like the verse that you just read, Alif Lam Mim غُلِبَتِ الرُّومُ. The Romans, when they're defeated from the Persians, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the second verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ. فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ. Like the lowest part like of earth. And then this happened in like the Dead Sea area. And if you go and look this up, you'll find that the Dead Sea area, it is the lowest part, like below the sea level in the universe. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said fi adna. And then the word adna, this is af'al al-tafdeel. When we say shay'un danin, it's low. Like this thing is low. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said fi adna, in the lowest part. So here there is something that we understand. So they were defeated in the lowest part of this earth. So we go and see that the Dead Sea, this area was the lowest part of the earth. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Literally, this means that the sun runs.
No. Yeah. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. Allah subhanahu, because scientists before they have theories about if the sun is like are we going around the sun or the sun is going around us? Is it like stable and like does it move or not? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the sun وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي, then it moved. then مُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that it moves like this, have this. It wasn't specific in the verse, but we can get from, as I said before, I don't go that far. I just analyze the linguistic part. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي, that means that the sun moves. So we understand that it moves, and it moves quickly. Because this is the linguistic meaning of tajri. And this is taqdir al-aziz al-alim. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is His will. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed. This is what it means. And yes, please.
No, it's a separate question.
Yeah.
I know you have a talk next week. Maybe you may cover this question next week. But as people living in the West, living very busy lives, what advice can you give on how to maximize learning of Arabic language in the limited time we have?
In the limited time, I would say that you start, every one of us, we memorize some verses of Quran. Just we memorize them by heart. We have listened to them a lot of times. We memorize them when we go into Salah, we read them. Start from there. If you do not have time to learn the language, like, to learn how it works and, how to put words together, try to learn how to understand it. So, this means that and this means that. So, do not recite something that you do not understand. You can, but so you say, I know these verses, or I do not know, but like this little amount of like verses of Quran, I'm going to memorize these like 1, 2, 3, 4 surahs. And then I'm going to understand the meaning. and I'm going to understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this and that. So each time I read Quran or I listen to it while the Imam is reciting, I have an idea, what does this mean? So and this would be easier. Why? Because every time, every day we listen to Quran. If not in Salah, we can have it in our phones. So that would make it easier for you. If you go over one small surah, one short surah, and you read it, understand it, and listen to it again and again till you memorize it and understand its meaning, this is a step forward to learn the language. And inshallah, at some point you will have time. Start with your kids. If you are so busy with your kids, and start with your kids. Teach them the language. They have time right now, and when they learn it, they might teach you later on, inshallah. So start doing something like this. Yes.
How would you respond to someone who says, "Why has Allah chosen Arabic, and why do you need to perform your prayers in Arabic rather than just reading the translation?"
Yeah, that's a perfect question. The thing is that you can easily reply to this. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Quran, and Jazakumullahu khairan, this is the point that the other guy said. He said, people say that the language of Quran is miraculous, but we cannot understand it because we do not know the language. So how come it's miraculous? If it was miraculous, it should translate easily in every language and everyone would understand the miracle of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't invent the language. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Quran with the language of the people that His Prophet is going to call for the message. So, there were Arabs. They spoke only Arabic language. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what was the language? If right now, if you have a friend overseas, and they know only one language, what language are you going to send the letter to them? You're going to use the Arabic language if they know the Arabic language. You are going to use English language if they know English language. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught to people through Quran in their own tongue. And as I said before, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to challenge them in their own language. So if it was miraculous in another language, they couldn't be able to understand it if it was like this. You got the point? Yeah, so you talk to people with the language that they understand. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down Quran in Arabic language, the language that people understand. Yes?
Just I would like to comment about the Dr. Khalid and the sister here. It is actually a problem to learn Arabic now because Arabic countries have got different dialects.
Different dialects, yeah.
Yeah, and it is actually even us as Arabs, we don't speak Fusha, we don't speak the proper Arabic language. But the other side, the people who learn, we have to put an effort. Even us as Arabs, we have to put a great effort to learn the language, a proper Arabic language actually.
Yeah, the standard language.
It's not just because as Arabs we can understand the Quran 100%.
Yeah.
But we don't put enough effort as Arabs or as non-Arabs to learn the language in a proper way.
Yeah, the right language, because people would say, we have like so many dialects, like, Moroccan dialect, Jordanian, Yemeni, Egyptian dialect, and so like, how are we going to learn the Arabic? Just learn the Fusha, just learn the standard language. And yes, I call upon the people who know the language from here that we have to start to put some effort into teaching and learning the actual standard language, the language that would make us be able to understand the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And believe me, it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference when you know what you are reciting and why. What you are reciting and why. For example, how many times we listen to Surah Al-Fatiha? A lot of times. Because even if Imam is going to recite a different, surah, each prayer, but in each prayer we are going to say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Malik Yawm Al-Din, Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'een, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, ghayri al-maghdubi alayhim, walad-dallin. What did you understand? What did you feel? What does it mean?
Nice words.
we listen to it, each prayer. And we don't feel anything, إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبِّي, except for those who concentrate and understand what does it mean. But we listen to it in each prayer or recite it ourselves, because it's a must to read Al-Fatiha. Yeah?
What do you know about the origin of the Arabic language?
Yeah.
Did it come from another language?
This is the topic of the next week, inshallah. How come right now? I shed the light on the language, but this is the topic of the next week, inshallah. I'm going to say, so this beautiful language and the other like Semitic language, the Hebrew, and how did the Arabic came in this form, and what makes it different from other languages in form and shape and the way we pronounce it? What makes it peculiar when it comes to pronunciation and sounds? Why they call it the language of God? So there are like a lot of things to mention. I'm not going to burn them right now. So, but just before we go to Salah, because sometimes there is a huge gap between the theory and the application. So one would stand up and say, okay, that was a nice talk, but you are a native speaker. You're native speakers, and I know a lot of like native speakers. And they go to Salah and they read Quran, but I do not see what you say. I do not see that them understanding the language, it makes a difference. We're going to do a little drill just before we go to Maghrib Salah. We're going to pray here. Yeah, so we're going to pray here Maghrib, inshallah. So I'm going to start with Surah Al-Fatiha. Understanding the meaning of the surah that we read 5 times at least a day if we pray, or like more in each. So in each rak'ah, so you read it like so. In Fajr, we're going to read it twice. In Dhuhr, so how many times you read it? And we are going from now on with just Fatiha. Each time we get into Salah, we read it in this way. And we contemplate in the surah in this way that I'm going to mention right now. Okay? In one of the hadiths about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that when someone says Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reply to us when we say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. What is the meaning of Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen? We are praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're saying thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the things that He granted us in this life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies to us saying, Hamidani abdi. Hamidani abdi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, oh, my abd, my slave, Hamidani, my worshipper Hamidani. He praised me. And then we say, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies to us, أثنى علي عبدي والثناء هو نوع من الحمد. It's like a synonym to the word to praise, but like higher in meaning. And when we say مالك يوم الدين, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies to us saying مجدني عبدي. مجدني means glorified me. And then when we say إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين, so we tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it's you whom we worship and whom we seek assistance and help from. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here says هذا بيني وبين عبدي ولعبدي ما سأل. This is between me and my worshippers, and my slave and my worshipper. ولعبدي ما سأل. And I will give my abd وَلِعَبْدِي مَا سَأَلْ, whatever he asked for. That's why after this we say اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Then we start to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to listen to us. So we say اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. So I'm going to ask you, you understood right now that after each verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies to us. So right now, all of you, could you please close your eyes? Close them, I mean it. Close your eyes, I'm looking at you. Close your eyes. I'm going to recite it verse by verse. You contemplate and you understand the meaning and you feel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is replying to you. So say it with me but without, without voice, just in your mind. And we're going to pause after each verse and imagine that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is replying to us. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. So when you read it in Salah, do you read it and pause and think like what you have done just right now? Does it make a difference? When you just close your eyes and think about what does it mean and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us for the surah of Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen to be part of each rak'ah? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is replying to us with each verse. And then when we say إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this is between me and you get what you ask for. So when you say اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, next time when you are reading Surah Al-Fatiha, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just right before this told you that He is going to reply to whatever thing that you are going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do. Okay? جزاكم الله خيرا.